Some said Tony Spilotro was a home-loving husband and dedicated father.
The image of Tony being polite, caring, family man, benevolent, that's bullshit.
Tony Spilotro was, in fact, suspected by the FBI of over 20 murders.
Tony Spilotro was a cold-blooded killer.
As Las Vegas enforcer for the Chicago Mafia, Spilotro hit whoever his bosses wanted taken care of. Anyone, anytime, any place.
I believe Tony was mental. He was animalistic.
He hung a man on a meat hook.
I think he got pleasure out of harming people.
For years, the authorities tried to lock him up, but he bought policemen, owned judges, and shot witnesses. He got away with murder for over 20 years.
To find that Tony Spilotro was going to be released back onto the street was devastating.
This is the story of the grim career of this notorious mafia hitman, and how it was ended, not by his enemies, but by his friends. On the 15th of May, 1962, in Chicago, 2 men and a woman were found shot dead in a car. Gangsters killing gangsters was common enough in the Windy City. For the police, it was routine. But the mob was angry. This hit had not been authorized by the boss of the Chicago Mafia.
With organized crime, the violence is organized and controlled. They have very strict rules and regulations.
The dead men were well connected and should have been off limits.
A soldier has a beef or an argument with someone, he can't take it upon himself to punish that individual without getting approval from his bosses.
Someone had broken the rules, and now they must be hunted down. For this job, the Chicago Mafia bosses turned to a young hoodlum. Although he stood just 5'5", his reputation for extreme violence was huge. 25-year-old Tony Spilotro. His first task? Find out who had done it. He learned that the 2 dead gangsters had beaten up a young mob associate, Billy McCarthy, at a bar. Spelotro made inquiries of a childhood friend, minor mobster Frank Carlotta. Carlotta revealed that he'd supplied the guns for the unauthorized killing, but said he wasn't at the scene. Spelotro only agreed to spare his friend's life if he told him who had pulled the trigger. The name Carlotta gave was Billy McCarthy. After Spelotro tracked McCarthy down, he wanted to ask him a question. Did he have an accomplice? McCarthy wouldn't talk. Then Spelotro tortured him with an ice pick. Still no name. Next, Spelotro put McCarthy's head in a vice. He tightened it. The pressure forced one of McCarthy's eyeballs out of its socket. Only then did Billy McCarthy name Jimmy Miraglia. The bodies of McCarthy and Miraglia were found a week later in the trunk of an abandoned car. But the FBI could find no evidence, and no witnesses came forward in what became notorious as the Eminem murders. It seemed Spelotro had got away with it. Little did he think that his old friend Frank Carlotta would one day bring him down. In 1971, the Chicago bosses rewarded Spilotro for his success in this line of work. They sent their enforcer to Las Vegas. The desert town known as Sin City was in full swing.
This little town out in the desert was making tons of money for the mob.
For 25 years, America's gangsters had poured millions of dollars into building the lavish casino hotels that lined the Las Vegas Strip.
Las Vegas was a cash cow for Chicago and for some other cities, but especially for Chicago.
But the mob weren't interested in a good floor show. They were in it for one thing. The only thing. Money. The Chicago Mafia controlled some of the biggest hotel casinos in the city. But gambling profits didn't satisfy their greed. These shiny desert palaces actually had a dark purpose. They contained the mob's most profitable and top-secret racket, the Skim. Cash received at a casino should be taken to a secure counting room, and the amounts entered into the accounts. But the mob-run casinos in 70s Las Vegas creamed money off the top before any bookkeeper or tax inspector even knew it existed.
It was nice. You sit in Chicago, have nothing to do with Las Vegas, and somebody brings you a bag with $50,000 in it every month or so. It was nice.
The Chicago bosses decided that Spelotro, with his tough guy reputation, was just what they needed to protect the Skim. One problem was that counters were tempted to skim the Skim, to palm a few dollars to line their own pockets. This temptation would be curbed by Tony Spilotro's talent for violence.
He sort of went at it as though he were running a dive in Chicago, with the blackjacks and the guns and all that sort of thing, and physical violence.
The mob also feared that staff might blab about what they saw in the counting room. But Tony Spilotro's murderous reputation guaranteed their silence.
If there was a hit that needed to be done, it was Tony's responsibility at the direction of those people back in Chicago.
The Chicago enforcer made himself at home in Las Vegas. And the neon-lit desert paradise was just perfect for a street hustler like Tony Spilotro.
Tony Spilotro, when he got to Las Vegas, found out there was no other family in here operating a street crime organization. So he had a wide open city. He could do whatever he wanted.
Spelotro soon began loan sharking to the armies of low-paid workers in the hotels and casinos, and he played by big city Chicago rules.
Chicago had a reputation, even among the loan sharks. In Chicago, miss one payment, baseball bat. Miss two payments, a bullet. They were known for that everywhere.
Spilotro also started a street robbery gang to pick pockets, mug tourists, and even burgle houses. Muggings and robberies became a fact of life in Las Vegas. But just as his new career as a Las Vegas street boss was getting going, the FBI got a chance to stop him in his tracks. In April 1973, Spelotro found himself back in Chicago under investigation for murder. Instead of a life of luxury on the Las Vegas Strip, Spelotro was facing life in jail. He had to find a way out. So first, Spelotro killed a co-defendant he thought might damage his defense. Someone he'd known for 15 years.
Regarding friendship in the outfit, it can only go so far, and one has to follow orders if one's given orders to kill a friend. Friendship would have nothing to do with it in the long run. These aren't nice people.
But when on May the 30th, 1973, the murder trial began, another old friend, Chucky Grimaldi, gave evidence against him. The prosecuting attorney, James R. Meltrigger, clearly remembers Spelotro.
Spelotro's demeanor in the courtroom was very businesslike, professional, didn't show emotion, very well dressed, and presented a quiet image if you didn't know better.
Even when Grimaldi's eyewitness testimony shocked the jurors, Spelotro was unmoved.
When Chucky testified, his testimony involved grisly details. He was shot, he was stabbed, he was kicked and beaten, he was threatened with castration, pieces of his flesh were cut off. There was no sense of looking away, remorse, ghastliness at what was being said about a crime that he, Spelotro, was alleged to be involved in. No emotion at all.
Grimaldi's detailed testimony clearly condemned Spelotro. But then, Spelotro turned the tables on the prosecutor and the FBI. He told them something their informant had not. He had, he said, an alibi. Spelotro's brother, John, testified in court that they were together shopping in a furniture store at the time of the murder. Even though 10 years had passed, amazingly, the furniture store employees said they clearly remembered Tony Spilotro. The defense even produced a dated receipt to show to the jury. It seemed the Chicago outfit had protected their man in Vegas as only they knew how.
We could not break the alibi. We couldn't show it was recently fabricated.
The jury found Tony Spilotro not guilty.
I was relatively surprised, crushed actually. That kept the image, so to speak, that some of these individuals were untouchable. That was exasperating to a prosecutor.
Tony Spilotro was a free man. Free to go back to his life in Las Vegas. By 1976, Tony Spilotro was expanding his operation and opened a new jewelry store, the Gold Rush. He made it the center of his loan sharking, bookmaking, and jewelry fencing operations. To help him expand even more, he later called in his old childhood friend from Chicago, who had helped with the Eminem murders, Frank Carlotta. Carlotta's job was to recruit experienced, skilled thieves from cities around the US and establish a first-class burglary crew. They made a real impact. Known as the Hole-in-the-Wall Gang, they left their signature all over town.
The Hole-in-the-Wall Gang got their name because they would punch holes in residential houses to get away from the alarm.
Spilotro was able to run his outfit with little risk of prosecution. His chief ally was fear. When the police or the FBI did get involved, they found a strange shortage of witnesses.
When someone comes by your house and says, we know where your children go to school, we know what your children do, either you cooperate with us or something could happen to your kids. That's the threats that they held over these people.
Fear was one persuader, money another. Local politicians relied on casinos for campaign donations. As some of those were owned or run by organized crime, many politicians were in effect working to preserve the status quo.
These people realized that their bread and butter was keeping these casinos running. And you couldn't blame them because it was the lifeline of Las Vegas.
Corruption was woven into the very fabric of Sin City, and this made stopping Spelotro an impossible task. The one organization that might have fought him, the Las Vegas FBI, was then just a small outpost. To make things harder, the FBI also faced corruption in the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department.
There was always tainted officers that were willing to accept monies from the mob.
They got perks out on the strip. They got jackets, gold bracelets, necklaces and rings and things like that to look the other way or not look at all.
The FBI had another good reason not to trust the Metro Police. Confidential information was often leaked to mobsters.
Anything that we would give to Metro would eventually get back to Tony and his people.
So in 1977, the FBI realized that if they were to take on Spelotro alone, they would need more resources, including surveillance, electronic bugs, and telephone wiretaps. FBI surveillance expert Emmett Michaels was one of a draft of new agents sent to Las Vegas. As head of the technical surveillance squad, it was his job to target organized crime and find out what they were up to.
They used to use places like the Fremont. They used to use places like the Stardust to conduct their meetings. To put in a bug where you actually physically had to go into a room where they met took a lot of planning.
The hunters became like their prey, breaking and entering buildings at night, albeit with a court warrant. Not in a quest for cash or jewelry, but information.
It really requires an FBI agent to become a burglar, a good burglar, be able to enter premises surreptitiously, plant a bug or a wiretap, and then be able to monitor that wiretap and obtain evidence of criminal activity.
But with casinos operating 24 hours a day, a sly after-hours operation when people were asleep was often impossible. To put in a bug, the agents had to face their foe in broad daylight.
The only way to go in was to go in dressed as maintenance people and put the bug in while they were meeting, like they were working in the room. That way it didn't draw any attention.
To get electronic surveillance on Spelotro, the FBI also had to secretly penetrate his headquarters, the Gold Rush. This was no easier.
FBI agents had to physically climb up the telephone poles and do the connection. And while they were up there, one of them triggered the alarm. And the next thing you know, Metro responded to a break-in. Had Metro looked up the pole, they would have seen 4 agents up there on a pole, which they didn't do, so we lucked out.
Eventually, Agent Michael's men did succeed in getting bugs into Spelotro's Gold Rush HQ. As they listened, their blood ran cold. They heard Detective Sergeant Joe Blasco and Sergeant Phil Leone of the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police identify FBI surveillance cars for Spelotro. They gave Spelotro and his crew the names of undercover agents. They even named informants, putting their lives at risk. Although Blasco and Leone were fired and charged for their actions, the cases were dropped. Metro's reputation was left in tatters. But one man was determined to repair the damage. In 1978, a complacent Las Vegas was shaken to the core when Police Commander John McCarthy was elected sheriff on an anti-corruption ticket.
We got an honest sheriff. That set the stage for good law enforcement in Las Vegas forever.
Sheriff McCarthy completely reorganized the force, promoting a swathe of committed young officers over the heads of the old guard. At just 33, Kent Clifford was promoted to the rank of commander and put in charge of the Metro Police Intelligence Bureau.
My ultimate goal was to restore the integrity into the police department. It wasn't that they was all bad, they weren't, but the Bureau itself was tainted. And the only way I could clean it up was to clear everybody out, so I did.
While Metro Police Commander Clifford was preparing to bring down Spelotro in Las Vegas, the gangster also came under threat from a grand jury investigation in Washington, D.C. In 1979, Las Vegas crook Jerry Lisner confessed to the feds about his dealings with Carlotta and Spelotro. Lisner's testimony could lead to Spelotro facing trial and jail. Spelotro now applied the mob rule. Rats must be exterminated. He made sure he got the hit on Lisner authorized by Chicago and told Frank Carlotta to take care of it. Carlotta had no silencer for his gun, and to reduce noise, he decided to use half-charge ammunition. The hit did not go smoothly.
Frank Carlotta told me he shot Lisner, yes.
The half-charged bullets had little impact.
They were having a difficult time dispatching Mr. Lisner.
Carlotta emptied a second clip into Lisner's head. Jerry Lisner's body was found in his swimming pool. This most unprofessional of hits seemed to meet its aim, keeping Spilotro and Carlotta out of court and out of jail. But it was only a reprieve. This night's work would eventually be part of Tony Spilotro's undoing. Meanwhile, Commander Clifford was ready to turn the screw on Tony Spilotro.
We couldn't play by their rules. We couldn't go out and just shoot them and get it over with. We had to play by our rules. So we sat down and said, okay, what rules do we have?
Clifford decided to get under Tony Spilotro's skin, to force him to make a mistake. He made sure his officers were there when Spilotro or any of his crew stepped out of line.
When they got up in the morning, we followed them. When they made a left-hand turn and didn't signal, we called a uniformed cop and had them arrested and had the car towed. They had to bail out. That cost them money. That cost them at least $1,500. They had to go get their car out of Huck. That cost them another $1,500. And it cost them inconvenience. And it made them mad. When they was mad, they couldn't think right.
Spilotro did now make a mistake. A very big mistake. After police shot dead an associate, Spilotro rashly issued a contract to kill the 2 Metro police officers involved. When Commander Clifford found out, he stormed off to Chicago to confront Spilotro's outfit bosses.
I knew that the Chicago bosses had never authorized a hit on a police officer. It was unheard of. They would never do that.
Organized crime has a rule. They do not seek retribution against law enforcement. Because if they do, then a great deal more pressure and attention is going to be brought upon them.
Clifford told Spilotro's bosses that if they broke the rule and came after his men, he would break another rule and go after their families.
If they kill my cops, I'm coming back out to Chicago with 40 men. I'm going to kill everything that moves, walks, or crawls around their house.
The prospect of being hunted down by a rogue policeman appalled the outfit's leaders, and they ordered Spilotro to cancel the unauthorized hit. Tony Spilotro was now in deep trouble. Not only had he failed to ask permission for a hit, but unforgivably, he put his boss's wives and children in mortal danger. Clifford had severely rattled Spilotro and damaged his position in the outfit. Spilotro was starting to crack. He demanded to meet Clifford, face to face.
We got nose to nose, Tony Spilotro and me. He said, you went to Chicago and told him you got 40 men. Well, I want you to know we got 400. I looked him in the eye and said, that makes us even, doesn't it? He said, what? I said, yeah, any one of my men are worth 10 of yours. And he backed up. He said, well, you said you was gonna kill me. I said, I didn't say I was gonna kill you. I said I was gonna put you in prison, and I am.
To a beleaguered Tony Spilotro, the police were now a real threat. And the Las Vegas FBI was about to get tough too. The FBI director in Washington was about to send FBI legend Joe Yablonsky to head up the Las Vegas office.
As the director said to me, I hope you can stimulate some activity And I do believe those words were met.
Joe Jablonski was a famously aggressive investigator and successful prosecutor, tough and unafraid. But in all his years, he'd never seen anything like the corruption in Las Vegas.
It was a place that was consumed by avarice and greed. My initial remark was, is this really part of the United States?
When he came here, he realized that he had to replant the American flag.
Until now, the Metro Police and the FBI had not cooperated. But they both now realized if they were ever to have a chance of jailing Spelotro, they would have to actively work together. What new FBI Chief Jablonski and Police Commander Clifford did next was unprecedented. They talked to each other.
I called him, said, let's go to lunch. So we went to lunch. He pledged cooperation. I pledged cooperation. So his men and my men got together out on the street. We had to earn their trust.
It was very important to have the cooperation of the Metro Police Department. I mean, they lived and grew up here. They had more informants on the street. You needed their assistance. You couldn't operate without it.
There wasn't anything we didn't share or we didn't try to cooperate with in our goal to rid the community of Tony Spilotro.
The FBI and the Metropolitan Police Department were of the same mind that it was now time to take decisive action against these people and go at it full bore.
Gradually, cooperation brought results.
Slowly, we were putting our puzzle together. Who the players were, what they were doing, how they was doing it, what hours of operation they worked, who their girlfriends were. We knew everything about them, except the color of their socks. We had a sense that we was circling the wagons, that we were bringing it in. We knew we had Tony Spilotro. It was just a matter of time.
Spelotro did not make it easy for them. He turned his Gold Rush jewelry store into a secure, fortified HQ. Guns were kept under the counter. He stationed men with binoculars on the roof as lookouts. He even had his own electronic surveillance and counterintelligence operation. Tony Spilotro thought he was invulnerable. But there was a weakness. The FBI had an informant, and Salvatore Romano was solid gold. He was the hole-in-the-wall gang's alarms expert. Romano revealed to the FBI Spelotro's elaborate plan for $1 million burglary on Bertha's antiques and jewelry store. More than that, he videoed their planning meetings inside the Gold Rush with a camera hidden in a loudspeaker.
The door itself is steel, and so that the steel don't activate the magnet.
If the police and the FBI could catch the gang red-handed, Tony Spilotro was finished. The date for the raid was Independence Day, the 4th of July, 1981. Spelotro's plan was for the fireworks of the 4th of July celebrations to cover the noise of the gang breaking into Bertha's through the roof and into the vault. But police officers and FBI agents were waiting for them.
I was with Yablonsky, and all my men had teamed up with an FBI agent. We watched it as it went down.
We were videotaping them when they showed up, and they carrying their acetylene torches and tanks and climbing up and getting ready to do their burglary.
Once the gang broke in, the agents and officers pounced.
We got the bad guys doing the bad thing, and we got all the equipment, we got all the evidence we'd ever need.
Among those arrested that night were crew boss Frank Carlotta and disgraced ex-cop Joe Blasco.
To see him show up there as part of that operation probably gave me some of the greatest joy in the world.
And I let him know how satisfied I was that I got to put him in prison.
The one person they didn't arrest that night was Tony Spilotro. But under new anti-organized crime laws, if they could connect Spelotro in any way to the burglary, he would face trial with his crew.
We knew that they worked for Tony. So absolutely it was significant at the time, tremendously significant. And it drew him right in to a major crime.
So it didn't matter whether he was there or not, we were going to get him. We were going to arrest him.
Spelotro's anxiety turned to paranoia. He was afraid members of the arrested gang might squeal and reveal not just his role in the robbery, but that Jerry Lisner had been killed on his orders. Spelotro panicked and issued an unauthorized contract on the man who knew the most, his childhood buddy, Frank Carlotta.
We got word that Tony Spilotro had put a contract on him because he was suspect of becoming a witness, which he wasn't.
Ironically, until this point, Frank Carlotta had been following the Mafia code of omerta and keeping his mouth shut. But Tony Spilotro had left him no choice but to rat him out. The debriefing and protection of Frank Carlotta was assigned to FBI agent Dennis Arnoldy.
Certainly Frank Carlotta was scared what Tony Spilotro might do to Frank Carlotta after the arrest of Bertha, certainly. And once we told him that there was a hit on him, it was well-founded fear.
Frank Carlotta decided to accept the protection of the FBI and became a government witness against his associates. Spilotro had sealed his own fate.
Carlotta totally cooperated. There was no holdback. So that was a breakthrough from the standpoint of having someone directly connected to Spilotro.
During debriefing, Carlotta reached back 20 years into his past. He revealed it was Tony Spilotro who had committed the unsolved Eminem murders. Spilotro was arrested in Las Vegas.
Now he faces extradition to Illinois and a Cook County grand jury indictment on murder and conspiracy charges in the deaths of two men whose badly beaten bodies were found in the trunk of a Pontiac in Chicago back in 1962.
In Chicago, on the 24th of October 1983, Spilotro went on trial for the double murder of Billy McCarthy and Jimmy Miraglia, 21 years earlier. Now, the FBI seemed to have Spilotro on the ropes at last. But the corrupting power of the Chicago outfit still reached into dark corners and high places. Some judges were rumored to remain tied to the mob, and Spelotro certainly seemed to think so. He persuaded his lawyer to agree to a tactic almost unheard of in a murder case. He waived his right to trial by jury. Judge Thomas J. Maloney alone would judge Spelotro. Maloney decided not to accept Carlotta's statements as reliable evidence. And so, he acquitted Spelotro. Judge Maloney was later convicted of racketeering, extortion, and obstruction of justice. He had taken bribes in 3 other cases. He was sentenced to 15 years in prison. Tony Spilotro may have escaped yet another murder charge, but it was only a short respite. This time, he was not untouchable. Law enforcement was finally ready for an all-out assault. He was hit with a triple whammy of charges. The FBI had painstakingly uncovered the mob's multi-million-dollar casino skimming racket. In the autumn of 1983, a total of 15 underworld figures, including Spelotro, were charged with fraud. Using Frank Carlotta's testimony, Spelotro and 17 others were charged with armed robbery and extortion.
Mr. Spelotro, anything to say?
But Carlotta had plenty to say. He enabled the Justice Department strike force to also charge Spelotro in connection with the murder of Jerry Listener. Carlotta admitted to Agent Arnoldy that he had pulled the trigger and killed Jerry Listener, but on Spelotro's orders.
Yes, Frank Carlotta told me he was acting under the orders of Tony Spilotro to kill Jerry Listener.
3 federal cases were now aimed squarely at Tony Spilotro.
When the indictment started to come down, you knew that it wouldn't be long before Tony's reign would end.
Spelotro faced sentences that could total 85 years in prison. This prospect put him under enormous pressure, and the mob knew that people under pressure can crack.
He was an embarrassment. He was a loose cannon. All doubts have to be resolved in favor of the mob. It's possible he could say something that would hurt somebody.
The Chicago Mafia bosses hated the idea that anyone might squeal, let alone someone who knew as much as Spelotro. Two days before the hole-in-the-wall gang trial in Las Vegas, the outfit invited Tony Spilotro to return to Chicago. He and his brother Michael met up with people they knew and trusted. Associates, friends even. The brothers were taken to Bensonville, outside Chicago, believing that Michael was to be inducted as a made man into the outfit. But as soon as Spelotro entered the basement, he realized what was about to happen. He asked if he might say a prayer. Tony Spilotro had beaten and tortured many victims in his career. Now, he was forced to watch as his younger brother was struck again and again. Michael was beaten to death in front of him, and Tony Spilotro knew that he was next.
The bodies were buried one on top of the other. The first body was just about 3 feet from the surface.
The bodies were found just 8 days later on a farm in the neighboring state of Indiana, clad only in underwear.
When Tony Spilotro was killed, I certainly was not saddened by the event.
What condition were the bodies in? Can you describe
They
that?
were decomposing.
Well, that's a better sentence than the government could give them.
The forensic pathologist's report recorded blunt trauma to face, neck, and chest by fists or feet. The brothers were unrecognizable.
The identification was made as a result of a comparison with dental charts.
Tony Spilotro was dead, aged 48. The last unsolved murder of his career was his own.
They kill each other because they're thieves, and even though they're supposed to have honor among thieves, they don't. They cross each other, they start looking after themselves, and for one reason or another, they get killed. And this is a pattern that has existed since time immemorial with organized crime.
Tony Spilotro's death marked the end of an era in Sin City. The landmark cooperation between the police and the FBI changed not just the face, but the heart of Las Vegas. Soon the mob's ownership and control of the casinos was ended.
There was a unification of local law enforcement, state law enforcement, federal law enforcement, where they got together and basically kicked the mob out of Las Vegas for good. I can tell you today, it does not exist here.
Our goal was to put Tony Spilotro and all these thugs in prison for life. That's what we wanted to do. And the end results, because they died, our culture, our society was better off.
Now, later in life, I thought we've done a good deed for the city and for the country. And I think we all should be proud of what we did.